I am so excited to introduce John Graham, a three-time USA memory champion. He's performed insane mental feats on TV shows all over the world, including Superbrain China with 400 million viewers. After enduring over 20 years of chronic anxiety and daily panic attacks, John discovered the emotional root of his struggles and successfully overcame them within months. He now mentors high achievers to help them permanently release their anxiety and panic attacks. John, welcome to the Fieldswell Podcast.
Happy to be here. I'm inspired by your story and I'm happy to share to your viewers.
Thank you. So I'd love for you to tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got into memory training.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that I'm just innately good at this, that I have a natural memory, right? And it was actually 10 years ago that I read a book on this. So I was 27 years old. I don't have a photographic memory. I learned through the book Moonwalking with Einstein. It was a book that captured my soul because the subtitle was The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And it just grabbed me. And I learned that there's ordinary people who they learn what their brain wants in order to remember. So stories, visualization, places, connections, just to remember massive amounts of information. And I thought it was so cool. And I just started practicing. I took a deck of cards and within a week I learned how to memorize a full deck of cards in order. And the rest is from that start.
Wow. So interesting that there's an art to it because I think many people think that memory is fixed and you're proof that it's not and that we can develop it and make it and strengthen it.
Well, the art part is the right brain, because a lot of people think memory is, just the way it is or it's rote, like you just review over and over and over hoping it's there somewhere and it's really boring. But there's actually ways to utilize your right brain, which is the creative, intuitive, it's where the downloads happen. And utilizing that, harmonizing that left and right brain is where you really amplify and maximize your memory power.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we get into all the tricks related to memory, I want to touch on you overcoming the panic attacks and the anxiety. Can you share more about that time of your life?
Yeah. I think since I was 13 is when it all started for me. I went through a chest surgery. I changed schools. I was in 8th grade. I wasn't able to carry more than 5 pounds to class. I had to leave 5 minutes early. Kids bullying, teasing, looking at me, just feeling insecure. And always, I remember walking to class every morning. And if there was snow on the ground, I thought my mom was going to die in a car accident. Just my mind was worst case. And it fluctuated over the years. I didn't believe it was anxiety until more recently in the last several years. But I got to the point where it was daily multiple panic attacks, like sheer terror, like that voltage going through my body. And if you've never had a panic attack, it feels like you're going to die, like the severe ones. Like you believe you're going to drop dead right there because your heart rate's elevated. Your arm sometimes will tighten up and mimic a heart attack. The left side of my face went numb once, and I thought I was going to have a stroke and die. Like they're extremely intense. And I was having them almost every day at one point. And I had to make a change because, up until that point, you and I have an interest in the brain and the mind, right? Very much so because of the power it holds. But we sort of obsess over our minds and our brains and we think it has the answer and the solution to everything. And I thought my mind was the problem and the solution for anxiety, for peak performance, for mind. But it's actually the way I overcame it was finding it was an emotional root issue. And so completely, therapy, mindset, meditation, supplements, all those things are great things, by the way, but they don't solve the root issue. And so I had to drop that and I took a different route.
And are you willing to open up about what that emotional root issue was that you were suffering from that was causing the panic and the anxiety?
Well, yeah, it's not really one thing, one event in particular. It's just an accumulation of suppressed emotions throughout our lifetimes. I know that I saw that you have an interest in Michael Singer, right? I went to see Michael Singer in person 3 times and, he changed my life, but he talks about samskaras, which are suppressed emotions that store in your body. And basically Everything in our life that we pushed away, that we didn't handle in the moment, is still inside of us.
Wow.
And so it's an accumulation of all of this suppressed energy that's blocking us from feeling fulfilled and peace and all of these things.
I have chills because Michael Singer is one of my favorites. And one thing that he has said that has stuck with me is that when all of these occurrences happen and we don't work through them in the moment, they leave little thorns in us, and we're walking around with all of these thorns. And when we don't pay attention or address them, and then they'll just get pushed in even deeper, when we just need to work on taking all the thorns out.
Yeah. We get poked, like I give an example. When I'm 35 years old, or when I was 35, and I'm building my business, and I get, sit down in the morning and pull up my to-do list and my email, and I check my email, and there's an email from someone I don't want to answer, and then I'm seeing a to-do list where I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'm feeling agitated by that email, not because of the email and the person, not because of the to-do list, but I'm being poked by stuff inside of me that I've held onto from the past, from when I was 5, from when I was 15, from when I was, 27. Yeah. These are thorns that are being poked and prodded. It has nothing to do with the people in the to-do list. It's an emotional root issue that hasn't been processed out and fully resolved.
So talk to us about clearing this, emotional root issue and then moving into memory training. Did those kind of go together, or were those separate periods of your life?
Yeah, I mean, they work in tandem. My ascension in memory and competing on some of the top stages and TV shows really added to the pressure of my life, poked all those thorns inside of me, right? So in my ascent to the top, that's where the panic and anxiety got to a really bad point, really bad. And so the way that I resolved it was partly what Michael Singer teaches, which is how to relax and release these while they're happening, because it's important to not wait till a therapy session or a meditation or the end of the day to do self-care. It's important to, in the moment, know what to do to handle the voltage of that emotion, to handle the fullness of life. And we're not just selective of, because most people, where they go wrong is they always want to feel good. And in that pursuit of feeling good, like, oh, I need to put on a podcast, I need to work out, I need to jack myself up, I need to get in state, right? That's good and all. But if you're feeling a lower vibration, or you're contracting in anxiety or whatever, that's one of the worst things you can do, because you're just pressing it down. You're not dealing with it. So we have to learn how to handle it in the moment. But another thing that was crucial that I innately figured out, was called to, was just how to regulate your nervous system. Because if you're feeling panic, anxiety, overwhelm, you're extremely tense, like muscularly, in your nervous system, and you're literally tensing and holding in all that suppressed emotion. So anytime you feel it come up and you feel it, like you tense up and you hold it in, that's what we're doing. So I had to learn how to completely relax my nervous system, release all of that deeply held tension, and not just regulate my nervous system in 30 minutes a day and a nice meditation. Again, throughout my day, stay that way. So it was almost a leaning in to all the discomfort. And later I found out that I could access some deeper boulders inside of me, and how to reintegrate those into my life, or into my being.
And what are some tips you have for relaxing and releasing throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is to understand that these suppressed emotions want out. The reason you're being poked is they want to be seen and processed for good. They want out. So it does no good to tense up and hold them in. So if you have to reframe it and say that it's spiritual growth, to feel that discomfort, to lean into those moments and let them be, instead of like pushing them away all the time, whatever you need to do to reframe that is a huge tip. Because a lot of us just can't handle that discomfort. We don't want to feel that way, when in fact that's your way out and through.
Yeah. So much of it is a story we're telling ourselves about it.
Yeah. I mean, our mind creates a meaning. Our mind judges everything. Yeah. Good and bad, peaceful, chaotic. It just sees the world in this duality. So any bad experience, any negative emotion, and especially these days, because a lot of people talk about manifestation. You and I were talking about that. And I believe in manifestation, but people avoid negative thoughts in feelings because they believe it will manifest more things, when in fact, if you're feeling something negative, you need to lean into it so that it releases, because you're attracting all the stuff to poke all those thorns. Like everything in your life is trying to hit those thorns to, your soul wants to learn from that. So it's hitting you for your highest purpose, but we resist it. And the more you resist it, the louder and louder life will get. And that's what happened to me.
We feel this need to label positive, negative, good or bad, but like it's information, it's asking for your attention.
Yeah. You're exactly, that's beautifully said. Your suppressed emotions have intelligence, divine intelligence. Why wouldn't you want to access that? I mean, yeah, it's scary. Yeah, it's unknown. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It will be uncomfortable. But that release is not only cathartic, but it integrates intelligence. Your body, your DNA feel that intelligence from that suppressed energy that you've held your whole life. And that's how you up level. Like I tell people, your suppressed emotions are your suppressed potential. There's another reframe. We want to access that.
Yeah. I love this conversation, but I also want to hear more about your competitions. As a 3-time USA memory champion, what has been the most memorable experience performing in front of hundreds of millions of people?
Yeah. I mean, that actually just happened this spring. I was invited to Superbrain. I was supposed to be on it when COVID happened, but then I couldn't. But yeah, 400 million people watch the show, which is unfathomable because, if people are familiar with the Super Bowl, that only gets 120 million, right? Only. And it's so world famous, right? So 400 million people, not only am I on the show, but I had to do something insane. I'm going up against a Chinese citizen who's a former world record holder, Guinness World Record holder. We have to memorize 100 different items. These are props from the show, like Rubik's Cubes and pictures. They're presented to us 2 at a time. There's 100 of them. And each of them is placed in a different locker. So there's 100 lockers, 1 through 100, right in front of us. Pick a random locker. They go drop it in the locker, shut the door. That's the last time we see it. We have to know what locker number is what item. And on top of that, Lauren, that's the easy part, okay? On top of that, the judge enters a random 4-digit code with their fingers to lock each locker. So not only do I have to do that, but it's in front of 400 million people, right? It's pretty easy. Pretty easy. Yeah.
And so would this have been the hardest thing you've ever had to memorize?
Yeah. The hardest part of that was that I had to do 2 things at a time. So when I went to China, I kind of knew what the challenge was. I said, yeah, I can do that. But then when I got there, they're like, I'm practicing. I was doing like 3-hour practice sessions in the days leading up. So imagine how exhausting that is to do that in the lead up. And they kept giving me slides to practice with 2 items on the same slide. I'm like, why? Just put them on one. Like, why are you doing this? They're like, no, that's what you're doing on the show. I'm like, I actually felt that voltage emotion go through me. I was so ticked. Like, not at them, but it's like it came up. And I had to go sit out in the hall and let that wash over me so that I could come to a place where the idea would download in. And I figured out how to do it. Like I had to, because 2 days out, I'm in front of 400 million people. You got to figure this out.
Got to figure it out.
Yeah.
If you were to explain to us how you went about memorizing it, would it make sense to us or not? Yeah.
So I have to remember numbers, right? Locker combinations and locker numbers. I use the major system to memorize numbers, which it's like learning a very simple language. Every digit from 0 through 9 has a different consonant sound to it. Like 0 is S, 1 is T. So I'm like literally grouping 3 numbers at a time and reading them. Right? So like 3, 5, 7 is milk. M-L-K. And I see that milk in my mind, right? So I'm converting the numbers into images, which is instantaneous for me because I've practiced so much. And I'm putting those images on the item. So if it's a Rubik's Cube, I'm imagining milk being dumped on the Rubik's Cube to remember that 3, 5, 7. And I'm creating a story. So that each time I see an item, like the way they quizzed us was they put an item on the screen and we had to type in the information as fast as possible. So I see the Rubik's Cube and I see milk in my mind and boom, 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 I'm typing it out that fast.
So making the visual association along with the sound of the numeric.
Yeah, I'm sounding out, I'm reading the number like a word, creating that image, which already created in my mind. It's a system I've already created, but yeah, making a story.
Mhm.
I poured milk on the Rubik's Cube. I got to see it going through those slots and, the feeling
Yeah.
of that and all of that.
Wow. Well, congratulations, number
Thank you.
one. I've also heard you talk about chaos training.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about this and how it benefits memory athletes?
Yeah. The first competition I did was the World Championships in China after 6 months of training. So I was a complete newbie. The first thing that I noticed was how overwhelming it was to compete. The pressure was so intense. The room's quiet. It's like everyone's taking a test, but my heart is leaping out of my chest and I can't think straight. My mind is going crazy. So I had to learn how to navigate the mind and that pressure. And so chaos training was what I used. Ron White, a former champion, talks about it too. He used to memorize cards underwater, like waterproof deck of cards, just to add to that psychological. So yeah, I'll do push-ups, holding my breath. I'll put a podcast in my ear as loud as possible, one that I like, that I want to hear. And I'll get on the table and I'll even like drink a bunch of water and have to feel like I have to pee. Like I will stress myself out physically, psychologically, mentally. Like I'll sit there and I won't want to do it. My mind's like, get up. This is dumb. You're doing horrible. The score sucks. All this stuff is going on. And instead of, here's the thing that changed my life in the anxiety is everyone's taught to block out your distractions internal, like push them away, like reframe your thoughts, like all this stuff. And I think that's BS. I think we want to let that wash over us. We want to just basically not even wash over us. We want to let it be. Because by pushing it away or like saying no to it, we're actually amplifying it. And so I had to learn not only to handle that stress because it made the competition easier when you're training that way, but it changed my life internally because I started allowing all this voltage, all this psychological stress to happen. Like when I was in China in front of 400 million people, I felt the adrenaline. My heart was racing. I felt dizzy at one point because of the lights and the heat. Like I let that happen because pushing it away makes no sense. It adds resistance.
Just allowing it. It's interesting. It sounds like that practice is just mastering multitasking, which they say like multitasking isn't great, but for you, I can see how that could make it seem easier once you were actually competing in the moment because the practice was so much more difficult.
Yeah. You're multi-handling. There's so many different dimensions, right?
Yeah.
I feel my feet in my shoes. I'm sweating, voltage of all of it's happening. And I'm not trying to push it away and solely focus. I mean, my training kicks in, right? Going back to focusing. But yeah, it's allowing. That's a really beautiful word and what one more people should embrace.
Yeah. What are some steps our listeners can take to begin to enhance their memory?
Involving story. If I'm like remembering Lauren, for example, like everyone wants to know names and information. You're going to turn Lauren or whatever information I want to remember into an image or something I already know. So if I think of Lauren, anyone out here listening, Lauren, what does Lauren remind you of? Right? Is there a Lauren in your life? Lauren, you went to high school. I went to high school, Lauren. I got a friend, Lauren. There's like, what's the Sophia Loren? There's like all these like brand names. Like, what do you think of? That's your association. Grab onto it and connect it to this Lauren. Her blonde, wavy hair. Her eyebrows. Whatever sticks out to you, make a connection. Like, oh, the Lauren I went to high school with had, brown hair, but now she has blonde hair. You just make a connection and a story to make it stick. So that's the basic. That's a basic technique.
Super helpful. I mean, names and faces, I feel like is something everyone can use assistance with. Let's talk about a certain scenario. We're at an event. We're meeting tons of new people, like back to back to back to back. What's your strategy for that?
Yeah, same as this. Here's a deeper insight. So in that example of Lauren, you can do it two ways. I could Google search my left brain for all the Laurens I want to find the perfect answer. It takes time. But right, everyone's perfect. Perfectionism. Oh, what's the right answer, John? I want the perfect image. That's a waste of time. So you want to allow, here's that word again, allow something to download in. The first thing you think of the ink blot test where they hold up that, the Rorschach test. They hold up an image. It's like first thing in your mind, blurt it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to blurt it out, but you see what I'm saying? Like, trust that thing. Lauren, like, even if you look at Lauren on her name tag and it's LA, you see LA, you think LA, California, use it, connect it. Because you're meeting dozens of people. You don't have time to like, oh, it takes practice, right? But you're downloading something in and connecting it to that person. Like, oh, she's LA, she's got blonde hair, right? So you make a story and then next person. You might not remember all of them perfectly, but it gives you a really good chance.
Yeah, I'm going to put this to the test. I think so often we're focused on like remembering the name that we don't notice anything about the person, and then somehow the name like goes in one ear and out the other. So I think it's so helpful to pay attention to what's the first thing that comes into my mind about this person that I'm meeting for the first time. Is it their eyes? Is it their hair? Is it their voice? What is it? And then building a story around that with their name.
Yes. So you're not only doing the ink blot with the name, but you're doing it with the person. Like you're looking at them, what sticks out, which I think is easier for people. It's the name that, crap, they just said it. Like I completely forgot, right? But for all you listeners out there, like if you say, I missed that, what was your name again? How do you spell it? Like people want you to ask them that. So like, don't be afraid to like, oh crap, I missed their name.
So much better than pretending you know their name and not saying it and them knowing that you really don't remember their name. Okay, how about for something like a deck of cards?
It's the same thing as like a number system.
Okay.
I am kind of a crazy person the way I remember cards. I've got 1,352 pre-made images. So like I read cards 2 at a time phonetically. Like the numbers, the suit, all form a word for me. I read it. It's too complex to explain in a podcast like this, but I turn that into an image, and now the thing with remembering them in order, right? There's 52 cards. You have to place those images somewhere and in order. So you use a memory palace or a journey method. It's basically use a place you already know in your mind. In your mind, go to your house, go to your front door. At your front door is the milk spilling on the Rubik's Cube. You see it drenching the porch, right? Then you walk in, you go to your closet, there's your next location where you put the next story. And so to remember the cards, you just go back to the front door, Rubik's Cube, milk, right? And then you translate back into cards and you walk that order again.
Building the associations.
Yeah.
What does your daily memory training look like?
Well, not so much anymore. It's funny you asked, I just retired.
Wow,
yesterday.
You retired. For yesterday, what's next for you?
Like literally, I just posted, I won the last 2 championships, and it was very hard, but I find that I'm growing in a different dimension of growth here. We're talking about potential, suppressed energy. That's my new passion and what I help people with. And I find myself feeling forced to train to memorize, and I don't like that feeling anymore. So I'm ready to move on.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Talk to me a little bit about a glimpse into the vision you have for yourself in this next chapter of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at the shouting from the rooftops type of moment where my whole thing is mental performance, mental health. I want to flip the conversation on its head, and not in a dramatic way, but realizing your access to higher potential and everything is in emotions, emotional root issue. So mental health really should be called emotional health. Mental performance the capacity can be expanded more greatly through emotions in tapping into those suppressed energies. And so my vision is to just flip that conversation or bring it forth into the consciousness of the population so that people can expand their potential and capacity beyond the mind, right? Because the mind is actually limited in its capacity. And so we want to access greater potential outside of that.
Oh, that's incredible. I can't wait to see what you do with that. And 2 words come to me that I think a lot of individuals need help with, and it's emotional regulation.
Yeah, 100%. And I wasn't even aware of what that was or what that meant. People are so far up in their head, and I was too. Like, I understand it. Like, if you're listening to her, it's like, what does that mean? Like, control my emotions, manage my emotions? No. You don't want to control or manage your emotions at all. Manage means control. Control means control. You don't want to use force to control and put emotions in their place. That creates the issue. That creates, not only are these suppressed emotions, these are your subconscious blocks. These are the barriers you feel viscerally when you procrastinate, when you feel apathy, when you feel shut down, when you feel like you can't put yourself out there. It's emotional. It's not mental. Like, your mind plays along with it. That's a different conversation. But all of that can be accessed through emotions. And like you said, emotional regulation is really, I mean, it's becoming very popular now, which is good. We need to know more about that.
Yeah, I think understanding your emotions and looking at the systems you have in place so that they can be a little bit more balanced and figure out kind of what's causing the roller coaster ride.
Yeah. And I'll go deeper than that too, because that's important. That's a stage of understanding what emotions there are and where they're coming from. But at the very basic, the easiest level, we just need to be able to feel the texture, the sensation of the emotions, and like sink into that feeling. The mind will get in the way, and like it'll say, like, what emotion is this? Am I doing this right? How long do I have to sit in this? I got stuff to do. The mind just gets in the way and wants to label everything. And so at the very distilled level, you just want to feel all of that fullness of life, all that voltage, positive, quote unquote, or negative, quote unquote, right? All of it.
Yeah. Allow yourself to feel.
To process it. Yeah. Fully feel.
For those interested in memory training, are there any websites or apps or books that you recommend?
Yeah. I mean, Moonwalking with Einstein's the only memory book I ever read.
Wow.
Like, literally.
I'm about to read that.
Good.
Yeah.
It's like just an amazing book overall. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but yeah, it's fantastic. So that's a really good place to start. And then there's Memory League, which I used to compete on. These are fun little 1-minute memorizations. People all over the world get on, and there's a Twitch channel too. You can compete and watch people just memorize insane. Like, I'm talking, like, I used to be able to memorize a deck of cards in 21 and a half seconds. I did that in a world championship. So It shows you what's possible, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's incredible. John, as we begin to wrap up, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Yeah. I mean, I want to challenge everyone to just make peace with all of the things that bother you. People want to know, how do you access suppressed emotions? I do have an 8-week program. I can give a link to that, and even a guide to talking about this emotional root issue so people can understand that. But if you understand your suppressed emotions are just trying to come out any moment you're feeling poked by that thorn, that's your portal. So start to notice every single thing that bothers you. And it frightens people to make a list. Like one of my clients, her name is Lauren, years ago was like, she was shocked at all the stuff that bothered her when I told her to write it down. And that's all the stuff you're holding in. But if people want to learn like how to fully regulate their nervous system, how to unhook from these emotions while they're happening, and how to release the boulders inside of them from their life to integrate them back, I have a program called Release, and you can go to releasepanic.com, or you can go get a free guide at releasepanic.com/free, talking about it's not a mental health root issue, it's an emotional root issue, and how to start navigating that.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes. And where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, those websites are, I'm on Instagram and YouTube pretty actively. So at Memory John G, you can find me on Instagram, and feel free to reach out and email me too. I'm happy to interact with anyone who has questions.
Memory John G, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Lauren. It was awesome.